fade the curtains. And
Okay. Was it Carrie, Chris? Who else had?
No, Virginia mentioned Virginia's not going to be here because she had a tea.
Right.
And there was another Gary, and then there was another. I think somebody from Purdue. So one of the Isaqual group.
Okay.
Was going to be on at 4:30, I believe.
Yeah, and there's Rhonda, but for most
and the Isaqual group,
we haven't heard from many people. So Rhonda, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, and see you. You look great.
Great. I'll probably mute just because my dogs are in the background. They'll start barking.
So,
until I speak. Yeah. So.
That's okay. Well, so we're a small group. I've got 4 or 5, but we might just wait a second to see if there's somebody else will join us. For the most part, most of tonight, there's a little bit of kind of content or subject to draw our attention to, but a lot of it is just conversation. And so I was thinking that we might have some time to break into our project groups, but we'll see. If we don't have any team members to talk to, that won't work so well. So there's Sharon. Welcome, Sharon Gulick, you're online. So we'll see how it goes. I think it was Ashley said she was going to be late. Or does that sound right? Madhavi? No, she's not going to be here.
Yeah, I thought she wasn't going to make it.
That could be. Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome, guys. Any updates that any of you'd like to share just as we get started? Success story from your project that it's like, yes, you hit a home run?
Yeah, if I could just jump in here real quick before the dogs start barking. We've got Chelsea will be late. I don't know if Jonathan can join us this afternoon or not, but we got our abstract accepted from ISQUALS for our research project on CDS and ISQUALS and community well-being. So that's a lot of fun. We're trying to get Chelsea's travel arrangements, but there's going to be 4 out of the 5 team members there at the Hong Kong conference for this session that we're doing jointly. And then for CDS, I guess we got accepted into the larger group, but I did have a roundtable accepted on a related topic. So if we had to use some of that time for it, we could, but I'm hoping we got formally accepted as a research project there at CDS. But we're planning to show up in full force, and we're working on our webinar, which has been a lot of fun. I don't know if Jill can join us today. I don't think she can, but we've got the platform ready to go, and the speakers lined up, and so we want to get a lot of mileage out of that with CDS members and ISQUALS members, so we can get that up and running here pretty quickly. At the moment, I've forgotten the date. It's in my emails, but then I'd have to minimize the screen again to go find that. So it's coming up fairly soon. It's sometime in March, I think, or maybe it's April, but soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you need help advertising that or promoting it, or is
Yes, we will. Well, actually, Craig said he could put it in Vanguard and a couple places at CDS.
Good.
But we're going to need as much help as we can to get people to sign up. And on the ISQUALS side, we'll have some people coming in from there too. So we hope to have a nice size crowd for this. So that could be pretty neat. And then, of course, we're looking forward to the Detroit conference as well. And we've got Jonathan's, our student team member, will be going with me to that as well. Well, Craig will be there. So there'll be 3 of the team members there. I'm not sure Jill can join us, but we're going to try to see if we can get her there.
Excellent. That is good. Sounds like plans are coming together.
Yeah, it's really happening. Very nice.
Well, so for your video, if there's a way that it gets recorded and you want it posted or shared for those that couldn't make it to come back and view it, we've been putting our recordings on YouTube.
Oh yeah, that's great.
But without the URL, I mean, it's so only our group really gets to see it because we haven't really advertised that broadly of where to go to find those. But.
Yeah, okay. And just one other quick question. Do we have, I know Chelsea sent a blog, but We haven't been able to see
Yeah.
it. And also Jonathan and Chelsea are not student members yet. So I thought we were going to, bring them on as student members in both organizations so they could get access and be able to see where the members go into on both sites.
I'm glad you brought that up. Because I had been working with the folks on the website and they put together, I'm going to have to go into my email to check where that is, but they put together a basically like a certificate that you would, or a box that I think you would click if you go to join. It says the person that's running our website has put together a coupon for group of fellows. It's embedded in the member registration renewal process. So when you go to calculate your fees, there's a place to enter that coupon that will give us a $50 discount.
And that's for all, Dan, right? That's for the grad students, but as well as anybody associated with the fellows, right? That's
It
for
says when you're
adults or, professional members or student members, correct?
Yeah, I think so. It says when your group of fellows joins or renews their membership, they should be able to use the coupon and get a $50 discount. It's called Fellow 50, and all you have to
That's
do
great.
is enter Fellow 50 and receive a discount. I'll forward this out to the group, but and they're going to try to put a little short tutorial together. But that should be ready when they're ready to join. They should see a little Fellow 50 coupon that they can use.
That's
So
great. That's wonderful. Thank you.
let me also, Aaron, welcome. Good to have you on board. I'll share my screen quickly while we're kind of just gaining capacity here. And can you see the CDS dashboard? Can you see the CDS webpage? Yes? Okay. Everybody muted.
Yes, we can see it.
Where'd everybody go? So I have been posting, and Rhonda, this is in response because Chelsea put this post together, and so I shared that on the on our conference site, and so I'm going to scroll so you can see where this is. This is the CDS development. Basically, if you go into CDS Connect for everyone, this is just the general page. And so I posted it there. I have not posted it in the CDS blog, but I can do that next.
See, we've been trying to, and we have that website where we have all of our information and where the Zoom is, or at least the connections to the YouTube on the Community Innovation Lab website. But unfortunately, the discussion post blog looks really funny when you put it up there. And so it's kind of hard to respond to, if you will. So that's why this is in a different spot, essentially.
So this is on the CDS site, and I can show you quickly maybe if I can move. I don't know if I can move to get behind the taskbar here. So yeah, we have the fellows blog page.
Mm-hmm.
And so Chris, can you help me post it here?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, it's going to look just a little bit different because this is kind of a basic. We're running this website totally. Brian and I are by ourselves, or I mean, Dan, I know that you've contributed as well, but we can get it
right
now as well. Which, if you go back, Dan, go back to the fellows general page. Yeah, just the fellows. That's where all the other. There's two different pages. This is where all of our intro and if you keep scrolling down, Dan.
Oh, hey, look at that.
Yeah, there it is.
So Chelsea's blog also got posted here.
Mm-hmm. So we've been working with Brian to try and keep things up as far as this goes, and see then resources. If you go down,
Keep going. Okay.
other way, yeah, keep going. I just want to see how the web links to all of the. So all of those are meetings. You can click on them. It throws you into the YouTube for all of them, and then these other links that are there are you guys last time in January. Everybody kind of had that. What was it? Kind of a 5-minute presentation on how your things were going. The PowerPoints. Those are all the connections to those. And then clearly the February will be the link for this meeting we're having right now. So, and then the further down obviously is the link to the intro things for everybody who we have who's on the, so ultimately guys, this is meant to be kind of a catch-all for all the fellows things. And we'll continue to put the blogs up, and hopefully we can kind of engage in that way.
So on the dashboard is Chelsea's blog, as well as I met with Sharon's group, and we threw together a quick blog about working with foundations. And I wanted to point this out, Sharon, that we actually had a response. This Garland Sidney Doyle wrote that they'd also like to see the Kresge Foundation. And so there's, that's a nice maybe connection to help. They were looking for areas of how to do that. I'll also share that when we posted it in the CDS blog, it also went out to, it looks like this. And so the Teams partner with foundations is on the CDS blog site as well. And I asked in that blog, I kind of threw that together after talking with them and running it back past the group, but some information so that others can kind of chime in or give feedback. And that went out in the last CDS Vanguard. So we're getting a little bit of promotion also for, let me see what's that. Oh, yep, sorry. For a little bit of, so it looked like this when it was in the Vanguard. And now to brag a little bit, we are internationally famous, or will be next week when the next Practice Insights magazine comes out. There's an article in Practice Insights about the Fellows Program, about this project, and how we're hoping to, it looks like this, exploring our role as community development professionals. And it's a little bit about kind of our process of coming together as a Fellows group and how we are, you can see here about the Fellows, how we're defining community in different contexts and thinking about it in terms of how we kind of push forward and build our groups or strengthen our groups. So I like that because it'll be in the Practice Insights that, according to the IACD website, comes out, I think this week. They're hoping to get that published. So that'll go to the International Association of Community Development Society members.
It looks good, Dan. I hadn't seen it yet until you showed.
Oh, yeah, it is nice. There's pictures, and it's very well laid out. It's very well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really impressive. Hopefully we could have maybe a link to it on the CDS website or something.
Oh, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. That's really impressive. That's great. Yeah.
It is, and I mean, it's about our work. So, good. Anybody else? Welcome, Virginia. We were just killing time until you could get here.
I can join until 5. I'm glad I can stay a little bit.
I'm glad you're here too. So, yeah, well, so we are actually gaining some kind of critical mass. Are there other stories or successes or published work or outreach efforts that anybody wants to highlight or that you're working on?
Hey, Dan, the Young Professionals Group, we got accepted for a think tank session at CDS.
Cool.
Great. Yeah. We probably do need to just chat a little bit about kind of logistics, and I think we're going to hit it. Actually, Virginia, we'll do it now for we'll start and end bookend it so that because I know that Dan is planning on at the very end, kind of doing a little bit more planning. To chat just a little bit about, we do finally. It's to be totally transparent, guys. It has been a pretty serious struggle with trying to get time during the regular conference for us to present. There's a ton of board support, but we've had one specific person that's kind of basically put us on lockdown and won't let us kind of do what we need to do for this. But the board has been supportive, and we are allowed to move ahead, and we now have time on, I think it's Monday morning. Is that correct, Dan?
Yep, with the full assembly, with the full CDS.
With the full assembly. So in theory, it's not in theory, actually what's going to happen is there's a chunk of time, I believe, it's about an hour and a half, but I think we get about 45 minutes of that, the morning,
Yes.
the beginning morning of the conference, in order to basically present. Everybody gets a chunk of that time, and that's what we have to talk about later as far as, each group, the way that Dan and I have talked about it and are envisioning it is maybe like 5 to 7 minutes for each group to talk about their overall project and what they learned and, pros and cons and all these types of things. But then at the end of everybody getting a little bit of presentation time, we do want some of the focus to be on, okay, so what did it mean to be a part of this? I don't want to call it a giant cohort, but essentially it's kind of our community of interest associated with innovation and community engagement. And what did it mean to be able to have other professionals that were doing different projects but in a similar space, to bounce ideas off of, to engage in this way, even if it is just once a month, and talk about kind of the solidarity and agency and all this great stuff that's happening because, we're working as part of this group. And so we will have time when you start planning. I know that, as far as conference links and things, those aren't up yet as far as timing, but just so that everybody does know, I don't know what the date is, Dan. It's a Monday more June. No, it's in July, isn't it? So it's the Monday. It's basically the first day of the conference. So I'm guessing here, I think it's like the third week in July, but we will be presenting as an entire group in the morning of that Monday. So, and we'll talk more about that. But at the end of this why are you shaking your head? Oh, I thought you were saying no. I'm not. But we will talk a little bit more about what that looks like. And I do think that, at least from my perspective, it would be nice for, everybody to have time to present, but also to engage the audience a little bit with maybe some questions and answers as far as, this entire experience. But that's really our time to shine. And I think it'll be really great to be able to be in front of the entire assembly of the whole conference. So we won that, which is good. We won that challenge. So it's great.
I am shaking my head because on my calendar I have that it's July 18 through 21, which is a Wednesday through Saturday. So
Are you? Oh, okay. Well,
I may be wrong though. I often am.
The conference is the 22nd to the 25th of
Okay.
July.
Oh,
The
I thought
22nd,
Sunday through Wednesday.
okay.
yeah. The 22nd is a Sunday, and the 23rd should be the Monday.
Okay. So it is the 23rd, the morning of the 23rd, that we will have the presentation time, to really shine. So I think that'll be exciting as we move ahead. And as you guys make your travel plans, just, I know everybody kind of adjusts according to when they're presenting and stuff, but just kind of put that in the back of your mind.
What'll happen then, I think that works well, is that if early in the conference, and maybe not on the first night, which may even work better, because people are still arriving and there's a lot of kind of, it's difficult to get the full attention of people on a Sunday evening, as everybody's kind of coming and going and just seeing each other again. So I like Monday morning, and that we'll have an opportunity to kind of introduce what we're doing. And from there, we can talk about the Young Professional Think Tank and the other opportunities where people can come together and explore each individual topic more deeply, or the presentation that you're offering and when that is. So I think it'll help us to have it early in the conference, and then direct people from there. So
Absolutely. I'm even kind of picturing maybe even having at the end, if we have a PowerPoint up or whatever, even kind of listing when people's think tank, I think there was at least 2 or 3 that presented, when their presentations are, so that people can kind of connect more later in the conference with whatever they're interested in. So I think that's a really good idea.
let me let's get going. Unless, are there questions or thoughts about that? Does anybody want to? I think it'll still correspond well with those that have presentation times and those that didn't have a presentation time but that are looking to even set up a time. Even if it isn't formally in the schedule and you still wanted to talk to folks at CDS, it's a Monday morning presentation. You'll have the microphone, and so you can say, hey, look, we're going to have lunch together on Tuesday or whatever. We'll reserve a table, or we can make those arrangements. Let's get into our topic a little bit. I want to share, and again, tonight is primarily just an opportunity to have kind of a conversation as we move forward. What we wanted to talk about today are what are the motivational factors for sustaining community. And so after our updates now, we'll talk a little bit about how do we strengthen those discussion, have a discussion around strengthening community. And we probably won't go into the teamwork for that session because we don't really have teams yet. But I do want each of us to be able to do a group project update and talk about kind of what Chris was just explaining, that this is an opportunity for us to give each other some constructive feedback about projects or project ideas, as well as the big question that looms for all of these projects is how can we help? How can we support the videos that you're planning? Can we advertise it? Can we promote it? Can we record it? Can we post it? Can we, in what ways can we help support the project work that each of you guys are working on? And then finally, how do we kind of capture and share these blogs, recordings, and build the bigger capacity of CDS?
Dan, can I jump in for a sec?
Yeah.
Okay, and you can actually jump to the next slide. That's kind of where I wanted to
okay.
So guys, as we were, and Dan did a great job, we've been kind of tag teaming on the content for today. But this is definitely a time when you can jump in, and we're looking for kind of your input on this. This is a second fellows program that I have led. This is the first one that I've led with Dan. And again, Dan, if I end up saying something that is non-representative, you can jump in. But I think both Dan and I feel like that this is a really kind of a valuable opportunity, and one that we don't necessarily get to do all the time. And so when I did the first fellows program that had to happen with the Community Innovation Lab, we again had several really strong people, both from Extension as well as community leaders, come in, and it was also about innovation. But they were working on individual projects. And at the end of that, it was a really fabulous experience. But there was actually not one of the groups ended up finishing their project. And I remember sitting down with, I may have discussed it with Dan, but with my husband, Brian, and saying, this is a great opportunity. There was lots of great interaction. There was lots of synergy. Everybody showed up to the meetings. But how do we get people to motivate people to dig in, finish up these projects that were all really cool? I mean, we're talking things about everything from a fail journal online to a kind of an agri-science combined playground but learning center, to a more direct route to distribute, like it was almost like a food pantry that was connected with the local fresh food movement. So there was a lot of really cool ideas. But after the program was done, nobody followed through and finished up their projects, okay? So one of the things that I've been struggling with, and we're also, and this is where some of these questions come for you guys, and it definitely centers around motivation, and that's where we're hanging today, because I feel like in this group specifically, first of all, I feel like we are a community of practice, because ultimately community of practice, we're all doing this kind of associated with something that we're doing with our job. Okay, even if we're in slightly different groups of interest within this community of practice. Okay. But ultimately, and this leads us to the first question. So we're our own community, if you will. What motivated you guys individually to participate within the Fellows Program, which again is our community of practice, okay? And then what keeps you motivated to work on our Complete Your Fellows project as part of this? Trying to get to this, how do you end up motivating individuals to dig into your communities, whatever they might look like, and ultimately, how do you sustain people once you get them kind of interested within the community? So that's where a little bit of background, and that's kind of where I'm really interested to hear your input on how we end up kind of addressing this issue of getting people interested, getting them engaged, digging in, and to stay there throughout the entire process.
So let's go around and talk about that. I think it'll be interesting to know kind of what does motivate each of us. Does anybody want to start?
Sure, I can jump in. This is Rhonda. I think one of it is this opportunity to connect to colleagues and learn more about community development. That's really the motivating factor for me, because some of us are not necessarily, we're doing other things too, a lot of administrative kind of work. And so this gives me the opportunity to really connect with my colleagues, both in research and practice. And also, I think, having students involved in the project is highly motivating, because, they work on a semester basis, and they need to, learn what involvement looks like in a project that's a group, and move forward, and how does, what would be the outcome of that? Would they, we had set out early on saying we'd have a webinar, and we'll do the conference presentations and other ways to connect practitioners and researchers across two organizations. And I think the students are really, what helps keep me motivated, because they're asking questions and wanting to know, well, what should we do now? And, it sort of keeps you on your toes, because you've got others who are wanting that. So I would recommend, if you can, include some students who are highly motivated to learn about it and want to move forward, because that seems to me, because again, they work on this basis of, can we get this done this semester? Because they'll move on and do other things, and leave for the summer and that kind of thing. And I think that's really important for me to have students involved.
Great, thanks, Rhonda.
Yeah, I like that.
And as part of the Fellows Program of the original one that we did, there were grad students in that. And I really felt like the combination of extension professionals, community leaders who are doing nonprofit work, and the grad students really was a unique, there was lots of different perspectives. It was a really kind of rich environment. So that ended up being a really great engagement in that way.
It's interesting because the students come into it with a set time frame in their mind that they need to finish by, whereas in our professional work, it's just like this ongoing, never-ending. So it is. I think that's maybe, I don't know how cognizant they are of that, but there is kind of a different schedule for them. They are excited to get it moving and finished.
One thing I'll add is that it helps us progress what we already want to progress. For example, in the International Committee, we already wanted to engage international practitioners in deliberations about various topics. And so the CDS Fellows Program has helped us convene those groups and helped us to progress those things. So it's been a bit of a kick in the pants for us to continue to work on what we had planned, but perhaps struggled to do. So having a set of colleagues within the Fellows Program has been a bit of a support network for Gary and I to progress things internationally. That's been really helpful.
What is it about that, Jim? What is it about that, about the colleagues?
One, it introduces a guilt trip because we have to do something between meetings. And on a serious note, the continuity of contact is really important. The success of fellows is that every month or so we get together and we compare notes, and it's that continuity that's really important. I think if we just had a one-off discussion, it wouldn't matter, but that continuity is really important, and also it prompts us, it keeps us on track, it helps us to make sure that we keep things progressing. Ideally, it would be great if we could raise topics that we're coming across in each of our teams and talk that over. But for us in the international group, we're not really doing project work, so to speak. We're basically having deliberative discussions. And it would be good to just raise some of the things that people are raising and have us talk that over as an additional discussion. But I think to answer your question, Dan, it's about a collegiate network and the continuity of contact that is most valuable.
That's awesome. And you're right, though. You don't want to lag behind in front of peers. I mean, when you're with a group of folks that you respect, and then it's like, we didn't get to it. Yeah, there is an embarrassment factor maybe there that keeps us motivated. Virginia, yeah, or someone else, yeah.
Sure. Well, all of the things that have been said, in addition, our group is somewhat unique in that we are all peers and practitioners in Detroit. So I was excited to have an opportunity to work together on a project with folks that we've worked together in other capacities, but not necessarily on a joint venture to move forward, to move a project forward together that would benefit, hopefully, the communities and folks who are involved. So that's what originally kind of motivated me, in addition to, being able to pull in our community development program in some capacity to this whole experience as an aside, but mostly the fact that we are all working in Detroit, and this is an opportunity to work together on some ideas and projects to move something forward that we usually have not. You typically don't have the time and space in your schedule, but when there's a reason and some grant money that's assigned to it, right. It's motivating to get something done. And so we still have a lot of work to do, but I think being accountable to the July conference, that there's grant money involved that we have to be accountable to, and being accountable to my peers is all motivation. And it's, as I said, it's been fun to have a reason to work together on a project in Detroit. So that's what personally motivated me to get involved.
I like that. And Virginia, you're right. It's like, there's this whole conference of folks that are waiting to hear from us.
Right.
So what are we going to say? We better do something.
Right. I think the July deadline is great, at least for our team.
It does make a difference. Yeah, that's good. So Aaron, were you going to?
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you all hear me now? I was having some microphone issues before, but it looks like it's fixed. Yeah, I would just echo a lot of what Virginia said, and it was really interesting. Virginia actually kind of recruited myself and Monavie, I think some other folks, and it was a great opportunity to really have that time to work on a project I think we all cared about, with folks that we've worked together in Detroit, but not as a group, and we're able to expand our reach now through our project and recruit even more people into this particular project we're working on. So that's definitely keeping me motivated, and it's giving that space and opportunity for us to do something that we all wanted to do, but we're able to find the space and time to do otherwise. And it's great to be able to interact with the different fellows too, and kind of hear about what they're working on, and also get some feedback.
let me ask. So what initially, I mean, the question there is what motivated you to start in the CDS program? Was there something that really drew you into the?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was interested in what was meant by innovative community engagement. Uh-oh. And so, and not really being familiar with CDS, and wanting to learn more about what CDS is about and what type of resources are available there.
Chelsea, I'm glad you could join. Are you in a crowded hall?
There we.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's helpful. So that was what I was going to ask. Thank you. Sorry, Aaron. Yeah.
That's okay. I think, right, just being interested in learning more about Community Development Society and what type of resources it could offer as well, in addition to being intrigued by the innovative community engagement aspect of the fellowship.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you did. But it's interesting because we've all been kind of unearthing something different so far.
Mm-hmm.
Who else would like to speak to what motivated them? Yeah.
Can just add something really quickly.
Yeah.
So for all the reasons that Aaron and Virginia said, but another personal reason is that Detroit is the first American city I've ever worked in. And so I thought this would be a good way to sort of learn how other people's practice looks in other parts. I think there are some things happening in Detroit that are a little unique, some are not, but I thought this was a good way to sort of probably the best chance for me to learn from people across the country about what kind of work they're doing and sort of what's going on. And then I think in terms of keeping our team motivated, it's nice that we're getting to work together finally, all of us, but it took a little while to define the actual project, and I think we came up with something that we've all been separately talking about for a really long time, like, setting some standards for community engagement. What exactly does that mean? It's sort of a conversation that's been floating around even at the city government level. So I think we picked something that'll actually help move many people's work forward. So I think it helps us take it. It's very timely. So I think that'll also help us keep it going even after this particular project is finished. We'll be using the results a lot, I think.
Thank you. I just had a sneezing fit, so I'm sorry. That's where I went. That is good. Sharon or others or Chelsea?
Well, I'll chime in real quick. I think for the Community Change Network, we've been working on this for quite a while. And I think we saw this as an opportunity to kind of jumpstart the project a little bit, kind of make that leap forward. We had the expression of interest from some of the foundations. So being part of this project helps us not only discuss it with other folks and get a broader impact. I'll be honest, the funds will come in very handy to try and get everybody into that central location so that we can have this conversation. But I think that having that better understanding of what some of these major funders need and want as far as metrics are concerned is going to be really valuable. It was one of the things that we found quite interesting that you've got major foundations who readily admit that they have been funding projects for decades and have never aren't really sure if those projects that they funded had any impact, or if they did have impact, was it the impact they intended? And so to try and think about what are some common metrics that we might consider as we discuss activity within community development funding and projects. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see where that goes. Who's really willing to, when it's rubber meets the road, to sit down and have the conversation as opposed to express interest, in phone calls and emails. But so I think it's going to be interesting. And of course, we did the survey in Boise around the whole issue of community change and what were the areas that we as practitioners or academics wanted to know more about within community development. I think those are going to blend in here pretty well too. So in fact, I think Connie and I are doing something at IHCD on that. And I think it was submitted as a session for CDS as well.
Yes, it was. This is Connie. I joined via phone for a little, as much as I can today, but that's right. And you described all the other things very well, Sharon, in terms of why we got involved.
So I don't know that we have much more to add than that. So mute my phone here.
Hey, okay. My mouse cursor went off the screen and it wouldn't come back on. So thank you. And thanks for chiming in, Connie. I'm glad you could join us too. Chelsea, I know you're in a spot where maybe it's loud. Can you hear us okay? And would you like to share?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, actually clearly, yes.
Oh, that's good. I'm not sure where the mic is, but it's working. Is the question why we're involved in
So, what motivated you to participate in this program initially, and what keeps you motivated?
I am interested in this program to try to come up with standards to really measure what helps people. So to see whether an initiative or change in community is making a difference, especially in the context of sustainability. And within that, I'm interested in food systems. So I'm interested to get more frameworks for figuring out what's really helping people and what's not, and how we can develop different ways of measuring sort of like quality of life or happiness, or sort of trying to get outside of things like GDP being a sole source of measuring how well something's doing, or how well the people are doing. Yeah, so I'm going on a journey of kind of like figuring all of this out as in my last semester as an undergrad, and wanting, sort of helping it inform what I want to do in the future too.
Good. Well, and I hope it is. And it's good too to know. I mean, the last couple people that have spoken talk about the outcomes as kind of driving their motivation. So that's really good. Hey, John Hill. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, no, I didn't. I was just going to throw in there. It sounds like that sometimes it has to do with the content as well as the interaction with, colleagues or friends or people that have the same passion, perhaps. That kind of encourages this. And again, as we continue, this is all really, really great stuff, if you will. But as we continue to talk a little bit about this, think, guys, when you are working and engaging, and this is where it's kind of a segue, but as you're engaging in the communities that you're working with, how to use things like this, such as being passionate about something, working with colleagues, the accountability factor, I mean, some of the things that you guys have already mentioned in the last 20 minutes, how those can be utilized in order to encourage, people to engage in the community change and to continue to work with this. So I think that you guys have hit on a lot of the stuff that Dan and I are planning on hitting on in the near future. John, did I cut you off? Do you want to contribute your 2 cents?
I wasn't cut off, but I think Dan was going to call on me. I guess I got involved for the same reasons that Aaron mentioned before, a lot to do with the innovation piece. But when it comes to what keeps me motivated, it's really not any different than what's already been discussed. I would go with reputation and accountability, meaning that people vouched for me, the Community Innovation Lab fellows and the CDS fellows. And so I have to, I guess, the whole principle of SES, I've got to uphold my end of the bargain. And so I have to make sure that I'm getting things done that I said that I would get done, because, when I say that I'm going to get something done, I'm giving you my word, which is my bond, and it'll make me sick if I don't get it done. So that's the bottom line is, the social exchange that's occurring and making sure that I don't ruin my reputation and I don't ruin the reputation of the people that vouched for me.
I wanted to also comment on that last one. My apologies for being late. We had a department meeting until now. I actually skipped out a couple of minutes early. I love a good excuse to get out of another committee meeting or something. But when it comes to why did I get involved, I'm actually in two of the fellows groups. One is the student young professionals and the other is the international. And I guess having been involved with the organization for some time, I'm concerned by the need to increase membership. So that is part of it. But the other is a fascination. Being on the board, I've seen a generational change. I'm now the old guy baby boomer on the group, and we have a lot of very younger folk with great ideas. And to me, that's absolutely the future of this organization. So if we can see more students and young professionals getting involved, I think that is where we are going to certainly make an impact. The other reason is that while I've enjoyed various committees on the board, like membership committee, working with Dan and others, they've been very much aimed at strengthening the organization organizationally. But in terms of doing anything outside to that, it seems like the International Committee has rather focused on that. So as we've had our monthly or every other month meetings, we've been able to talk about some of the issues outside of the organization. And it seems that what we're doing now on the International Fellows is continuing that. But as John and I are working with the Young Professionals Group, we're seeing the same thing connected to youth. So tomorrow night I'll have my next pizza party, and our last deliberation dealt with how to do community development in a polarized environment. This next one will deal with what are community developers' roles on issues of poverty, hunger, and homelessness. And interestingly, one of our students developed and is now marketing a board game dealing with that very topic. So we're going to play that game for our pizza thing, as well as talk about CDS. We'll get a copy to John. And that is grabbing some attention. And then while we're there, I'm also then able to say, and by the way, we do all this kind of stuff at the CDS. So that's kind of what my rationale was for participating.
Gary, I think you get the award for marketing this the best as far as with the pizza and the game. So we appreciate that.
John and I are in there, man.
It's good. Yeah, I think John had one, maybe last week, John? I thought you had a meeting perhaps. You know, I think something else that was brought up, guys, and I don't necessarily know, again, this is actually a research project I'm doing with a grad student right now as far as looking into this idea of motivating individuals. Because see, again, I do a lot of teaching at UK. And so it's easy to motivate students because you say, hey, you're going to get a grade for this, so work on it, you know. But once you get outside the teaching realm, and it's much more that in these communities that we're working with, it may not be as tangible a reward, external motivation, whatever you're talking about, particularly with something like this. You guys have all brought up really, really good, maybe they're external rewards, but really good reasons why you're engaging in this. But they're not as kind of clear cut as you have in a classroom or you have something that's required. And so in this research project, we're struggling with this idea of going into the literature and looking at motivation and how can you get to some of the things that you guys are talking about? How can you get people to engage? Maybe it's a personality thing. Some people are more passionate about things some people are more internally motivated. Some people are more externally motivated. But ultimately, how can we continue to get people to jump into these types of engagements within the community and these types of communities of interest or practice and continue to keep them in there 3, 4, 5, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it may be. It's definitely, like I said, it's a research project I'm working on. So this is actually kind of near and dear to my heart as far as what you guys think as we move ahead with this idea of motivation.
I worked with a group that was Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW, and they were wanting new members to join. And it was interesting because we were talking about just what you said, Chris, kind of the difference between families and how once they're out of service, can they just be told what to do and when to join and when to be there? Or is it more of an influence relationship, not authority based? And they were kind of struggling with, how do we invite people in without just telling them, they have to be here? So community leadership is different by authority, and community engagement in what we're doing often is, we don't have authority or punishments necessarily. We may have incentives. I don't know. Chris or Craig? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to also add to that. I can't tell you how many times being with an extension that I've been asked to go talk to different professional organizations about how to increase volunteers, how to increase people's engagement, how to maintain membership. I mean, I actually get, being the leadership development specialist, I get a lot of those requests because, guys, we're not the only professional organization. We're not the only, even with the fellows with the lab, it's a professional development opportunity, but it's not like an intact organization like CDS. We're not the only ones that are struggling trying to keep people engaged actively engaged in their community, honestly. And so that's, I think, where the discussion, and I know that Dan, you have some content here in a second, but I think that that's where the discussion really lies, is how can we, continue to bring in people, engage the ones that we have, and motivate people to keep doing the stuff that is considered probably extra by a lot of people.
I agree. I like it. Craig, we haven't heard from you yet. Do you mind? Do you want to pitch in? What kind of keeps you motivated? What motivated you to get involved, and what keeps you going?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, to be fair, the reason I got involved with CDS Fellows is because Rhonda Phillips asked me. And I think that's the story of community, is that you join a community because someone asked you. The reason I went to Community Development Society's first conference that I went to was in Cincinnati, was because Rhonda Phillips asked me. So there's a theme there. But in the reality is, I wanted to be a part of the CDS Fellow program because I think that we're all better together. And I know that's a real sort of cheesy answer, but seeing the question you pose here, why do people get involved in community? I mean, that's what I wrote my dissertation on, is on neighborhood leadership and community leadership. And so really looking at, what is that in our brains that make us want to be together and help each other and forego our own self-interest. And so I really wanted to be a part of the CDS Fellows program because I wanted to see what others out there were doing. And I like the idea of a cohort model, us being together, and hopefully we find ways that once we finish through this first process, if you will, together, that we have ways that we can continue to connect and engage and overlap, and not just formally participate in CDS, but just participate in community development as a whole.
I like it.
Well said, Craig. I think that's great. And you're right. It's about connecting with others. I mean, it's sort of, if we're all off on our own doing this kind of work, it's really hard. I mean, it's so much easier when you have colleagues to share with and talk about it and bounce ideas off, and just to help celebrate. So when you can get something done, there's someone who understands, and you feel good about it together, and you make good positive things happen. So well said. I'm proud of you.
I worked in community volunteer community improvement groups when I was in Kansas, and some would say, we put flyers on every flagpole that said everybody's invited, come on down on Saturday, and no one showed up. The people are just too busy, and they were disappointed and discouraged. And other groups would say, they wouldn't say, and they would have this huge turnout, and I would ask them, well, what's your secret? And they said, well, we invited people. And I said, how did you do that? And they'd say, well, Craig invited Rhonda, and Rhonda invited, it was personal invitations that they started calling up individuals instead of inviting just everybody. Hey, everybody come to my house on Saturday. They started saying, Craig, I think you would really like this event coming up on Saturday, and I think you've got a great perspective to bring that would be really important. Yeah, can you join us? And so you're right. Some of it is that personal connection. Thank you guys for all kind of pitching in, and I trying to take notes, and we also recorded this, but I think this is so important. There is a little bit of work that's been done. I'm going to reference some of the if my slides work. Let's see here. There was some work earlier about why do people get involved with the community and what keeps them going, and this actually I'm going to admit this isn't research. What I mean by that is this was materials from a leadership program about what motivated people and what did they respond to in a leadership context. But what I found as I was looking through some other resources is that this was kind of intuitive and maybe echoed what we're dealing with too. One of the reasons this comes out of Miriam Cragness that wrote a Dimensions of Leadership profile, and they had done some limited research just to see what what caught leaders' attention and what caught others' attention in terms of what they were looking for in leadership. And so they identified the first four. One is people. That people motivated were the motivating element, and by that, these are kind of my words, but it's that sense of collaboration of people I'm inspired, I'm energized by being around you, I like working on teams, I like serving others, maybe I've got a commitment to the responsibility of the group, and so it's that kind of social connectedness or interaction element. They also identified that some people said, well, one of the primary things that drives me are more idea focused. And that might be that I'm inspired by a vision or an idea or a project that is well defined, and that the idea itself kind of pushes me forward. And I'm motivated to see it through because, wow, we're just doing this really innovative thing, and that excites me.
Hey, Dan, going back to the first one, I was just going to say that first one really strongly reminds me of social capital within a community. And a lot of you actually just mentioned that said either people invited you, you did it so that you could do a unique project with the people in your community, but it's that value of relationship that, I mean, even on the opposite side, it's even the accountability. You know, I feel guilty if I don't kind of ante up at the end of the month. But it's almost like a social capital aspect.
Yeah. And I like that. It's kind of like what excites you about working in a group. And some people that are more introverted might say, no, it's not.
It doesn't.
I hate interactions. You know, I hate webinars. Don't make me talk. And so it's not like these are all for everybody, but they may play a different weight in terms of what kind of motivates you to get involved. The third one was just a sense of accomplishment. And actually, I heard several of you say this, that getting something done, having a project completed, moving it forward, getting some success, maybe it's rewards or recognition for that accomplishment. Maybe it's actually knowing that CDS values this and that accomplishment is going to be important to the overall institution as well as your own project goals. But that sense of accomplishment was something that came up as a motivating factor. A fourth one that they identified in this study was character, and that's that, well, I'm involved because it's the right thing to do, or this is important to me, and or part of, and character is their word, but that the way that they characterized it or defined it was that it would include things like, I made a commitment to do this and I'm not going to give up until, that's what motivates me, is that I'm going to keep going until it's done. And maybe the involvement, I heard some of you say, involvement in the fellows group kind of helps push that forward. And so maybe it's your conscience or character. Other things that I thought of in terms of community is just maybe it's not as strong, and maybe it's related to people, but it's a sense of belonging, of being, I come back because I feel like I belong here. I feel like I'm safe. People understand me. Maybe that's the same as people. I'm not sure. But not just people, but maybe more emotionally based. Our coach at the University of Kentucky, about 2 weeks ago, I don't know if you caught this, Chris, we lost 4 games in a row. And since he's been at Kentucky, he'd never lost 4 games in a row. And he said, I think this was on the news. He said, I think we got some things worked out. I told each player what their job was. I was very clear about giving them a role to play and tell them what their job wasn't, because they were all trying to do everything and carry everything on their backs. And he turned the losing streak, and now we've won 2 in a row. But a clear role to play or responsibility, and that gets kind of into what Jim was saying too, maybe. Yeah. Was a motivating factor that keeps people going.
Well, and ultimately too, when you're working within, and a lot of this stuff can also be applied to committees or coalitions when you're trying to pull people together. But a lot of the stuff that I mentioned, right, when a group is beginning, is outline very specifically why you're there, what the mission or the vision or the goals are, and then ultimately what role does everybody play, and clearly outline that. So there's complementary roles, but not everybody's kind of falling all over everybody else. And a lot of times you'll have an emergent leader and all of these other things. But I think that that's really a great point as far as the roles go. And even that when you look into psychological sense of belonging, of community, there's definitely an emotional component. There's definitely a membership component. I mean, it's very, 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 very parallel to this. So I think it's a good application here.
The other thing about a clear role to play might be that if you don't see that I really am contributing much, then you may opt out. Say, well, I used to go, but they don't need me.
Point.
So,
yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So what else? I mean, these are, like I say, they're based in some maybe practice and or some research, but this isn't, the defined list according to such and such. What else have you guys found that you think helps people stay involved with the community or get involved and stay involved?
Well, this is a huge issue for us, Dan, and I'm sure it is for everyone. The factors that are influencing volunteering and how this might happen better. But some things we're focusing on is the same 6 faces, who turn up to everything. And you'll have a dozen committees in a community and there'll be the same people on every committee. So we need drivers. For things to happen in communities, you need people to stand up and not be sort of rah, follow me, but to really provide that drive and focus. And you guys, both you and Chris, are providing that with our group here. But you do need those people, but they get burnt out and they need support. And they also need to delegate things out to people. And what happens in a lot of communities is that people become community martyrs. They don't give enough space for others to participate. It's ironic that leaders in communities often complain about, well, there's no one coming to our meetings, there's no one stepping up. But in fact, if you talk to young people or others about, hey, why don't you get involved in this? And they say, well, it's a closed shop, no one gives us a welcome, no one invites us, and it's not the footy team, it's my footy team, this is the way we do it around here, and it's not a welcoming place. So providing space for people to participate from different backgrounds, I think, is a really key thing. And the second thing is temporary commitments. What really turns people off is an open-ended, ongoing, relentless commitment of time. And if there's a task-oriented, sort of like a sunset clause, so we know that July is the time when we're going to sort of come to a head and finish sort of thing. And in communities, we need task-oriented things. People want tasks. They don't want responsibility. And I think if we can delegate tasks in communities, that's going to be much more easily accepted than just come and be the secretary of this society for the next 10 years.
Right.
So breaking it up into temporary commitments, I think, is another thing that makes it more palatable for people.
That's a great point, Jim, because ultimately, I think, there's so much of the stuff that connects, which I think is really cool. But in the past, when we've run into, volunteering specifically within communities, there's some things like, for example, going to a meeting where you're just meeting to meet, but there's not actually, like maybe an action plan at the end or some specific goals that you're trying to accomplish. But also the idea that breaking it down into, as opposed to, I just want you to be a part of this organization, but maybe you help with this specific fundraiser, maybe you help with, like you're saying, breaking it down into tasks that have a beginning and then ultimately an end, so you can be successful, or I think is really important. And it can motivate people, where do I fit in, as opposed to just saying, hey, just come out and hang out with us because we're a good group type aspect. I think that's really important.
Well, how it often happens here is the typical scenario is I've been the president of the community organisation for the last 10 years. I'm really burnt out. I've really had it. I'm sick of the relentless fundraising, and I'm going to pass on the chair role. So I'll ask every one of you, I'm really sick of this, and everyone here says no, that I don't want to take this on. So you go to a new person and say, well, how about you become the chair? It's participation out of obligation rather than participation through motivation. And that's often the invitation people get. So we've also got to make it fun and social. Not a party, but it's got to be enjoyable. It's got to be rewarding. So if people spend 2 hours at a community meeting, they've got to walk out of there going, well, that was 2 hours well spent.
Yep.
With a lot of our organisations, people go, oh, God, we've got that done with. Now we can get on with our lives, So we've got to make it fun, social, inviting, interesting, rewarding, that kind of stuff.
Let me just reflect. So I've done rural community development, and we used to say the same 10 people, and now community development is down to the same 6 faces. I thought, oh no, when Jim said that. Our groups are getting smaller. Pretty soon it's going to be the same 2 people, the STP, as rural communities get more and more rural. Yeah. Connie, go ahead.
Connie, and one of the things Jim brought up the being burnt out, and so that brings up a couple of thoughts in the work that I've done in engaging communities. One being trying to put them in a mindset of succession planning as you're engaging them to take leadership roles, and that part of their role is to also be thinking about who's going to follow them next and working to potentially engage that person and cultivate and mentor them. Now, it doesn't work perfectly all the time by any means, particularly when you have really long initiatives that you require involvement for a longer period of time. That becomes challenging. But one of the things I also read and came to understand, it really does make some sense, is burnout, although there's some of the element of, no, I've just done this too long and it's time for someone else. But one of the other aspects of burnout is being asked to do something you don't actually know how to do or can't do. And that becomes the barrier for keeping people engaged often, and they'll say, I'm burnt out as a result of that. But so and the other thing I noticed in that application in kind of that community work was when we had some groups that were working on really complex problems and they've identified some really substantial big goals, they'll do a little bit of the initial work, but then as it starts to get really hard, it is very hard to keep them engaged because they're not sure which route to take and which way to go to make it happen and come to fruition. So that coaching and keeping them into the project management mode of little steps that it's going to take to get you there may be the key that helps work them through that part of it's too hard, and I'm not going to keep moving at it then.
Thank you, Connie. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's really insightful. As you were talking, I was actually looking. Mary Lippitt has a founder and president of Enterprise Management Limited. This is a little older, but she had 5 components of managing complex change. And I don't know if you guys have worked with that on your community change team, but it is interesting because basically she put it on a grid. And so when one of those elements is missing, kind of as you were just saying, actually, if you don't have the capacity to be able to do what you're being asked to do, you get a lot of anxiety as a result. If you don't have a clear vision, there may be confusion of moving forward. If you don't have the resources, it's just frustrating. If you don't have an action plan, there's a false start. And if you don't have the proper incentives, you'll get change, but just gradual change. And I thought that was very interesting how she had kind of pulled that together. I can share that. I'll post it on the Community Innovation on our Fellows blog page. So,
Dan, that is so interesting. But it's also, I mean, I've worked with so many communities that have seemingly no resources whatsoever and no hope of getting any additional funding, as well as sort of no clear direction. But then from that process itself of community development, they've been able to find out what that direction is and what that, where they're going to go from there. And so sometimes it's almost like if you have everything you need, it's sort of like getting the bank loan for small businesses. Well, if you already have everything you need and meet all those criteria, you don't need the loan. But if you need it, that's when you have to really reach deep and try to find out what we can do, alternatively. So,
yeah.
I like that framework, but on the other hand, there are so many places that, would be so discouraged to see that because they're not going to have a clear-cut vision, or they're not going to have sometimes any hope of resources flowing their way. And, it's just, you just sort of have to figure it out as you can and, sort of, move forward, if you will.
Right.
But I just wanted to point that out because that's sometimes you'll never have all those pieces ready to go,
Right.
to push forward on something.
As Apple says, or one of those in terms, you just move forward and innovate as you go.
I think that's how we end up often just doing it. I mean, let's not overanalyze it. Let's just push on. So I'm going to ask you guys a tough question. This is what you always hate. And do we have enough people to get into our teams now? Do you think? Does everybody on the call have somebody else on the team if we were to break into small groups, or should we just stay as a full team?
I think everybody has at least 2 because there's 10. Is that correct, everybody? I think we do. I think because we have 10 others besides us, Dan.
Well, if we're willing, we can break into small teams. This was what I was going to ask, and that's always the killer question. We came up with all these reasons of why people are motivated to join. So each of us, in some way, is trying to convene or strengthen a group of folks around a cause. And so the question there is, why might people join your team? And the next question is, how are you communicating that to help that audience feel like they're welcome, like they're meaningfully engaged, that they're, for all the reasons that we just started kind of talking about in terms of what does it mean or what does motivate people to get involved. So are we okay with spending just a little bit of time talking about that in our own team groups? In our project groups?
Dan, let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
When you say, why might people join are you talking about, like, let's use community change. Are you talking about why the foundations might participate, or why fellow practitioners might participate, or both?
That's a good question. And actually, Sharon, your team was one of the hardest ones for this to apply to. Because, I mean, getting more international involvement was, it's like, oh, yeah, that works. You can start thinking about why would people kind of come along and start forming that critical mass where you're starting to really get a lot of people kind of engaged and interested in moving forward. Student groups, that's a relevant question. With the foundations, I'm not sure. Maybe it is foundations. I mean, why would, I mean, how do we articulate that? It's a little bit different though, because they're not, I don't know. And ISQUAL's, your group as well, it's a little bit different. Thinking about, getting two different associations to, you're not necessarily a team, you're kind of working on a project of, you've already got two teams and you're trying to think of how they merge.
But what is I'm wondering though, guys, can you think about that at maybe a larger scope, perhaps a little bit? And the reason I say that is both for, and again, I think it's particularly for the ISAQUALS group and the community change group. Why would a foundation, for example, want to engage with or collaborate with, if you will, people from, like CDS? Or why would, like for me, the ISAQUAL group, I think is a little bit, but I mean, can we think about it as why would we want to kind of collaborate between groups at a little bit larger scope than maybe individuals? I don't know if that throws off the question.
Well, this was kind of the question, that each of our groups is working to strengthen some element or aspect of either a community of practice or a community of interest or some kind of project group. And we talked a little bit about why people might want to join that group. And then what I was wondering is, how can we talk about how do we reach out and get the people motivated to join, and how do we keep them?
Give it a shot.
Okay.
And come back after a few minutes.
Are you guys okay if we give you maybe eight minutes here, and it's 5:21, so maybe 5-6 minutes in groups? Chris, can you separate us into groups?
I will do it. Uh-oh. Now let's see what I can do here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep, give me a...
We'll see if this works. And then what I'd like to do once she gets us into groups is come back and share a little bit. Not only what does this mean in terms of if we apply it to the community or project that we're working with, but this bigger question too that I'd like to have a little bit of time to talk about, and that's how can we apply this to the overall CDS membership? And if the group thing doesn't work out, then we'll just talk about it. Chris, how's it going?
Yep, I've got 3 rooms going at this point.
Great, okay.
Okay, can someone tell me who is 920-645-4879? I don't know who that is.
That's Connie Loden. So Connie and Sharon would be together.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm both on Zoom but audio's on my phone.
Gotcha. Okay. We'll put Aaron. Chelsea, you should be with Craig and Rhonda, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And let's see. All right, who is U800-5341? I think I've got everybody assigned.
Yeah, that's me. That's Jim.
Jim. And I'm gonna, well, Jim, I'm gonna put you with John and Gary, okay? Does that make sense?
Yep, that's fine.
All right. And there we go. I think everybody should have a room.
It looks the same from my end.
Are you guys not in rooms? Oh, wait a second. Wait. Everybody should. It says
something's happening.
All rooms are open. I think
All right.
it works.
Enjoy.
So hopefully she got my audio too.
Okay, I'll put your audio in there. Sorry. Breakout room 1. Okay, that should have worked maybe. I think it worked.
Chelsea is still on.
Yep, Chelsea should be in she's listed in breakout room 2 with Craig and Rhonda.
Okay. It looks like it might be frozen.
Should I try again?
Chelsea, are you there? No, I don't know. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Isn't that cool?
I forgot how to do it. So,
okay.
Chelsea, are you still on? Hey, there you are. Hi.
I'm trying it again.
It kicked you out?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's see if it works. Okay, I'm going to click join, and then it said I had to do an update for some reason, so I'll just do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I don't remember how to do the rooms, but it is pretty amazing.
Well, ultimately, Dan, it's you click on the sorry, the breakout rooms are right in your face. There, now I can see you. Anyway, there's a manage participants and there's breakout rooms, and literally everybody's name pops up and you just manually assign them to the room. Now, what I hadn't done when you said, oh, it looks like it's not working, you have to, it says on the bottom, there's a thing you click that says open all rooms. So I had to open them, and that's when they all kind of shifted everywhere. I wasn't aware that Connie was on her phone too. Otherwise, I would not I didn't know that. But
yeah,
I have to be gone at 6.
No.
So ultimately, I mean, I'm recording. Everything's going fine, but kind of have to be walking out the door at 6. But I think the discussion has been fabulous, don't you?
I love this session. Yeah, I mean, I love the conversation.
Well, and I what I've liked about this specifically is, well, first of all, that I am literally doing a research project on this because I'm trying to figure out that when we do fellows programs in the future, and not necessarily just this one, because I think, so here's the thing, I think ultimately the people who are participating in here are really motivated.
Hi, Chelsea.
I'm back, but I'm not in the right room. Let me try again.
Do you want to try replacing her in a group?
I can do it again.
Okay, it did the update, but then it said, enter a meeting, enter your name, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? The link should work. Okay.
There you go.
Let's try this again.
Try it again. But ultimately, I mean, I think that I get the feeling, because I took some notes while they were talking. I took some notes, and it seems to me like there are people who are really passionate about, you know, for example, coming up with those things that they're doing in Detroit, or the ISAQOL trying to connect. And so I think that's awesome. But I also don't know if that applies. Like if we were to get another fellows group with the lab, I don't know if we have to look for like a certain personality, a certain topic. Like how do you end up motivating people to dig in that way and to produce, you know, ultimately the pubs that we wanted, or like work on their projects, or, you know, so that it's beneficial for all involved.
So part of the motivation that I heard a couple say, well, the grant really helps. And so, I mean, it is a big part of this group coming in. I don't know if foundations want to fund this kind of thing. I mean, that maybe there's a connection there from what that group is doing.
Absolutely.
But the other thing is the conference. I mean, they're going to have to report back on what they're doing.
It's almost an accountability thing.
Spending, I know, to CDS, and I think that's like, oh, yeah.
I think it's good. So ultimately, I think there's different pieces, and Shannon and I are working on this. She was supposed to take a motivation class, but it ended up being super overwhelming and a ton. So actually what we're doing now is an independent study where she's actually doing, kind of an intensive lit review. And ultimately, we may even ask these fellows some questions, but how do you end up with, like, what types of motivation are involved, and how do you end up motivating individuals to participate in and finish professional development type of, because it's very different than the classroom, Dan. In the classroom, or even at home, you can say, you know what, if you don't eat your dinner, you're not getting a cookie. As opposed to, in this case, I mean, there's really no structures that are like it's almost like there's no power here to require stuff, other than maybe
rewards and
guilt.
Punishment, right?
Right. Other than some guilt with, hey, we gave you some money, now do something, So it's a different scenario.
That's what I keep talking about in community leadership, is that, I mean, you have people in authority, but we actually ask, well, what gives that elected person authority? If the
distribution of resources.
Yeah. I mean, where does their influence come from? So, hey, so one of the next things that we were going to do they come back in, or do you have to invite them back?
No, I think what happens, I have a button here that says close all rooms. So ultimately, when we get to a space where you want everybody to come back, I think I just click that button and it throws everybody back in.
Got it. So I was going to ask them to do a group project report, but we've only got 30 minutes or less.
Yeah, and I feel like they kind of did that a little bit in the beginning.
I do too. Maybe we can. So one of the things that Jim said that stuck with me, though, is he said, I wish we had more time to report. What was he talking about? But basically, like, things that come up in the conversations through the phone.
No, you know what he said? Because I wrote it down too. He said, I wish we could bring current issues and had time to talk about current. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Because I typed that down. I put that down as far as it would be nice to be able to, if we had issues in our own world, kind of, if we could bring them in and talk about them.
Oh, okay.
Is that what, I mean, it may have been something, but that's what I heard when he was talking.
Okay. I thought he meant like more, hang on. You went away. There you are. More time to talk about issues that came up in the international group that they're wrestling with to get their project done.
See, I inferred it. I thought it may not be. You can ask him. I thought I heard him say, like, if there was an international issue perhaps in the news or something that's current, that they would like to be able to say, hey, so how does this apply? Or it may just be totally interpretation, though. So you may want to ask.
That probably would be good too, though. I mean, what you're describing.
I think any interaction that you can do with peers, and I mean, I think there's some application here, but there's some also different perspectives. I mean, I really super value the perspectives that the Detroit team brings compared to the perspectives that the past presidents or the community change group brings compared to ISAQUAL. I mean, I think it's really, compared to the international piece, I mean, I think it's really good.
I do too. I like what they're doing. Well, so to finish this out, instead of sending them back into their groups, because we probably won't have time,
right,
do we just want to have them go through and have a representative of each group just share?
Yeah. I think the way this at least, and this is my suggestion, you can do whatever you want. I think you have a representative quickly kind of report what they talked about, and do go through all 5, because ultimately here we've got 30 minutes. So give them 2-3 minutes to report back, maybe kind of debrief them, tie that up. And then it wouldn't hurt, Dan, to have them start to think about, like you had at the end of the presentation, this idea of pulling together at least what they would want to report at the CDS conference. I don't think we necessarily, because the next time we'll meet will be in March, April. I mean, like literally we only got 2 or 3 more times. So even if it's to think about, do we all pull together an individual presentation so it's a consistency thing, or do we all just have pictures, or do we, just start to think about if they had to give a 5 to 7 minute presentation about what they're doing, what that would look like, and maybe they have to start taking some pictures and pulling together some resources so that they can, report basically. So I think that's what in the last 25, 30 minutes, it makes sense. I think that's what we could probably get, at least from my perspective.
What's the name of the Kappa Chupa thing where they each have like 3 slides?
Oh, no, it's, what is it called? Pentakucha.
Maybe we ask them to do that. If we had a 10-minute kind of overview of what this is, CDS funded, initiative, we met. I mean, if we had 10 minutes, that leaves 35 minutes, 5 groups, that's 6 minutes each, right?
Yep. I think that's fine. Although I'm going to play devil's advocate. I don't want to do it that way. If you're okay with that, I want to do it. I think we've done I think you and I can do a really speed job of, okay, this was funded last year. There's 5 groups. Here's the topics. Now ready, set, go. I would prefer our 10 minutes that we get at the end to be a little room for questions if we have it, but also, what's the essence of participating in a group like this as far as what does it mean to be in a professional cohort? What were some of the challenges of pulling this group together? What were some of the and focus more on that, the process, than maybe giving the background of the group. That's just my opinion as far as that goes. So.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of the value, Dan, in this type of thing is the different perspectives, is this idea of why they're motivated to be a part of this, of the accountability and the respect and the different perspective. I mean, I think there's a ton of value that can be shared out of this.
Yeah, I hope so. I think so too. Well, yeah, let's raise that question and see how they want to do it. Okay. Also, yeah, I don't know. Is it time? Should we pull them back in?
I can pull them back in. It's been about 10 minutes maybe.
Oh yeah, let's do.
Okay, here we go. All breakout rooms are going to close in 50 seconds. So I don't know. They've been told it's about time to come back. I think Zoom has literally made it so much easier to be virtually together. I mean, it's great. So
yeah.
As opposed to, I don't know, was it Skype? There was something where sometimes it would go to your face, sometimes it wouldn't. You could sometimes see people. You could sometimes, it was really complicated.
Yeah.
But I think
I like this too.
Yeah. I think it helps this distance stuff. So I got 23 seconds.
Cool. Anything you want to say about the group before they come back?
Wow. Now that you mentioned
it. Yeah.
And they suddenly start popping up again.
Time. Exactly. And time.
Well, for all the challenges we had trying to get our brains wrapped around this, I think they're doing some cool projects. So I'm happy. I'm happy. And the money stuff worked out, which is good because everybody, had access to that. So it's good.
Oh, my microphone still works.
They're all back. See, they all popped back in.
How did that work? Was that helpful? To have a little bit of time.
That you did.
Poof, magic.
Chris did the magic.
It's called a button that says close all rooms. Zoom is great.
It is. So let's see what happened here. I'm going to stop share. That's not what I wanted. Can guys, oh well, we can do it this way. It's not going into the slideshow mode. I'm not sure why. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. So a couple of quick comments, I guess. I'd like to hear if you've got a person from each group that can talk a little bit about how did this apply? I mean, we're talking about what motivates people to get involved and stay involved. And when you think about it in context of your project, was this insightful, or did it bring forward some new ideas of how you might engage folks? Let's just do that. If we can hear from each of the groups quickly, just a quick synopsis. Was this helpful? And if so, how so?
But you have really got to hear what an Australian sage once said from the Cavay clan. So, Jim, you got to tell them, man.
Bloody hell, Gary! What a lead up that is. Well, we were talking. John and Gary and I were talking about, how frustrating it is to keep sending out invitations to like 70 people that we have on our list, and we get three people and a dog there. So we just talked over. Do we continue to just keep sending out invitations, or do we do something different? And so the wise quote is that, engagement is not about having 100 people in the room. It's having everyone know that they can participate if they choose to. That's really what engagement is. So the fact that we get 3 people and a dog there doesn't really matter, as long as everyone has been aware that they have the opportunity to participate. That's the key. So out of that, I guess we've come to the default position that we will continue to invite a lot of people on our invitation list, and still not be disappointed when only 3 turn up. That was what that was about.
That's good. And are you also specifically saying, hey, there's a session coming up, we're going to be talking about something that I think would really interest you? I mean, do you do the broad as well as?
Well, one of the things we talked over, and I'd be keen for Gary and John to jump in here, is we were all pretty stretched. We've got a lot happening, and there are a lot of things that are taking up our time with CDS. And also there are a lot of options for CDS members to be involved in. And we're just feeling, well, maybe there needs to be a bit more focus, and it needs to be more achievable, what we're trying to do. It seems a bit as though we're trying to do too much and too broadly, but I'd be keen for Gary or John to add in.
Well, John and Jim were very, very kind, allowing me to have a therapy section as I expressed my feelings of feeling absolutely overextended. But I could easily make a full-time job right now out of CDS. But that whining aside, it occurs to me that so many people are overextended right now, not just us. And if that's part of all of the options that are out there, there's a smorgasbord of options, and we can't be involved with everything. So with this, the International Committee, we have 60 some odd members whose names are on the mailing list. When we send that out, we get 4 or 5 showing up. And John, I'll let you speak for us, but we also have a similar experience.
Yeah, so within our bigger group, we send out invites to the same people every month. And so far, Gary has been the only one to show up along with myself, which has become, for me, kind of frustrating. And so that's where the discussion came from, was like, do we keep doing this or what? And then within our own little groups, for me here at the University of Kentucky is, when I send out the invites, how do I do that? And Dan, you were asking, are they personal or are they like this mass email? And I've done both, and I try to make it personal, saying you can gain something from this, but also I think that you would contribute a lot of your own knowledge to the group discussion that's going to occur. So I think that's a great idea too, is kind of more personalizing the invitation towards that individual, if that makes sense.
I like it. What about another group? So we got 2 of them. We heard from the student group and the international. How about a representative of the Detroit group, Virginia, or someone? The question is, as you had this conversation about what it takes to get motivated and engaged, did this help?
So I don't think Virginia is on the call anymore, but Erin is still here. We talked about sort of our conversation was in the context of the specific project we're working on for CDS, which is the community of practice for people who do community engagement work.
Yes.
And I think we settled on a few reasons why we think it was relatively an enjoyable experience asking people to join us. And so far, most people have said yes. Just because I think everybody on the team has like strong and positive reputation in the community development world. That we carefully chose something that we think would be useful for people's own work. So we really envision that every single person who's working on this with us will be able to use this in their own actual practice on a day-to-day basis. And that, as I said earlier, it's really, really timely right now. I was laughing the other day. I'm like, they should just call the CDS conference in Detroit. Who gets to decide? That's like the conversation we have. It seems like for the past 2 years has just dominated, like everything is about participation and engagement. But it means, a million things to different people. So we thought that those are sort of the 3 reasons why. And it's like hyper focused. It has an end. And it's like really easy to understand what we're trying to do. So when we put out the ask, I don't think it was complicated, and people recognized it from the discussions we've had with them in our other interactions with the participants. I don't know if you have anything to add, Aaron.
No, I think you, pretty much covered it. It's time limited, and we're only asking them to meet with us 3 times, really.
Oh, right.
So, there's something else I was thinking of, but no, pretty much, I guess people like us and they want to talk about this.
Good. Well, so I hope it's helping, and like you say, yeah, you've got maybe a clear audience that this applies to. So, what about the 2 that I thought were a little bit more ambiguous about membership and getting people engaged would be ISQUALS and the community change team. Either of you like to go first and share whether this applied or what you talked about?
Either Craig or Chelsea, do you want to talk today? I've got 2 very loud dogs in here with me at the moment, so I'll probably have to mute again.
Well, I'll talk real quick, and then Chelsea, feel free to add. We thought that our community is really a community of individuals that are looking to make bridges between organizations, like bridges between ISQUALS and CDS, and so CDS, even within its board, has a group of passionate individuals who are wanting to sort of take this model of a partnership and shared membership discount rates from between CDS and ISQUALS to IACD, which is the International Association for Community Development, and other groups. And so our hope is then to strengthen that. How do we get individuals in ISQUALS who want to do such partnerships with other groups than CDS, right? So we visited about one of the ways that we all can stay connected is through conferences and continuing to attend these conferences together and supporting individuals. So sending certain students, especially to particular conferences and others to others, but really figuring out how do we even connect, and Chelsea was talking about this and it was great, how do we connect with student organizations and student-specific groups in order to help them get connected with some of these larger professional associations and the different, like the webinar we're going to put on community well-being in May. And so we're trying to figure out ways that we can stay connected ourselves, but also who else can we bring to the table to keep this going.
Awesome.
Thanks, Greg, for that. Yep, that pretty much covered it. I'm going to make it an assignment for myself in the next month, or hopefully by the next time we meet, just to kind of poke around at different steward organizations and see who might already be interested in those organizations. It would also be ideal to be able to tap into just individuals in the university who are students who might be interested in this kind of work. Because I came from an agriculture background, so this isn't something that would typically have just sort of fallen in my lap to then be able to pick up and learn more about. So it'd be cool to find either classes or student orgs that have an interest in this quality of life community development stuff.
Awesome. Connie or Sharon?
I think it's me. I think Connie had to leave.
Okay.
We talked about this in terms of kind of 2 different audiences. The foundations themselves hopefully will be motivated by a desire to have better metrics, and coupled with that, why would they then hopefully engage with community development, either as through the individuals that are part of the society or the society in general. And I think from that perspective, what we think could be the motivating factor to join Community Development Society would be the ability to have access to practitioners and professionals. Because one of the things that we hear from them a lot is, we want to accomplish X. We're not really sure how to go about structuring that. We're not really sure about the best way to formulate that. And by getting engaged with CDS, they'd have access to experts who have and individuals with expertise that hopefully we can do some linkages up there. Flipping it the other way, and why would our colleagues get involved with this? It got a little bit, it was a little more difficult actually. I think that we've experienced a little bit with the same thing that some of the other groups have. You know, we've got a group of probably, again, you know, the proverbial 50 people that are on the mailing list, and there's probably about 10 that are actively engaged on our monthly calls. What we do see is when there's I don't know quite how to say this, the appearance of opportunity that they could jump on the bandwagon at that point, get engaged with maybe a funding opportunity or something, then suddenly we get all kinds of people that are interested in getting engaged again. So there's a little bit of that, trying to get folks to understand that you need to be involved on a consistent level so that you really understand what's going on, and not just kind of run in at the moment there's money and grab a couple of dollars off the table and run off. You know, that you can actually do a lot more harm to not only yourself but to the whole effort in that. And so that's a piece we're struggling with just a little bit. But I think for CDS, the linkage between CDS and the foundations, at least we hope, has the real potential to really get some folks set up to do some good engagements with them.
And maybe the group wants to explore what a foundation membership would be. It's different than an individual or an organization. I mean, maybe it is just its own thing.
And it might be, you know, because again, that person that might be involved, that there could be some flux depending on, you know, there's a lot of movement within foundations, but it could be that depending on the project they're working on, there may be different people that would move in and out. But you know, over the last few years, there's been some interest in having more people from the foundations come to the conference for that access to training, and I think that's something we just need to explore and make it as easy as possible. You know, if we can make it really easy for them to slip into that, then as with anything, you get it to be a habit on their part, and then we can keep them engaged.
And I like that. I think, you know, sometimes I know I'm worried about this last question. How can we apply this to the overall CDS membership? I think if we're all doing our individual group building and initiatives well, we are expanding the awareness of CDS. Maybe we invite some participants that are new to CDS to come and speak or to be involved. We create those venues or avenues for them to become involved, whether they're a foundation or another association, and what does that mean to have shared association membership. But by kind of helping to clarify that, I do hope that the results are that we can see some strengthened membership, both participation of our own members as well as outsiders. Well, let me back up and just say we talked about this, and we've got probably about 8 minutes left, but we talked about people, ideas, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of getting that it's the right thing to do, or some sense of doing what's right, maybe a sense of belonging, giving people a role to play. I don't know that any one of these is the silver bullet, but I think all of them have something to do with what people look for when they join a group. And so as we're moving ahead with our projects, maybe this is helpful just to kind of reflect on and think about, as we invite new people to present or be involved or get involved, how do we strengthen these aspects so that hopefully we're hitting on something that's most important to those new members? With that, I want to go to the group project reports, which of course we don't have time for, which is exactly why we're here also. Jim, you made a comment earlier and you said you wish there was more time to share like ideas or things that come up through the group. As we move forward, do we want to carve out and have some individual group project report time as a part of our next few months to to make certain that we have those time for those conversations. Did I understand you right, Jim, that was what you were hoping for more of?
I'm in two minds about it. It would be great for us to share what each of us are doing and to get an update from each of us. But on the same token, it would be good to draw out topics or issues that we need help with or feel are important for us to explore more together. So on one hand, I wouldn't want us to just have a long list of we're doing this, we're doing that, and all that stuff. That's interesting as it is, but the best use of our time might be, boy, we're doing all this stuff, but boy, we're having trouble with this issue, and that might be, how do we better engage with, networks of practitioners on a certain topic. So I don't know. Personally, I would say it would be good for each of us to come up with an issue that's bugging us, and to bring that to the table and say, hey, let's talk this over and try and help each other with this particular topic, as opposed to a long list of activities that each of us are doing.
I like that. And it's kind of the direction I was hoping to go with thinking about our project reports even today. What's the overall goal, but what's working? What do you need help with? And then even as you're looking ahead for the next month, what needs to get accomplished? So maybe Chris and I haven't talked about this, but maybe there's a way that we can design the next online session when we meet again in March to really carve out time to do this, especially with each of the groups kind of preparing exactly what you said. What would be most important that we could use this peer group to get some feedback on, and to think about how we might push forward? Does that capture what you said, Jim?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, exactly.
I think we do. So for each of our project groups for the next time, and we can summarize this and send out a reminder as well, but I think it would be good to just have that sense of being able to kind of, in a very quick and concise manner, talk about what's currently happening and what can we kind of chime in to help give you constructive feedback or ideas or support with for each of your project groups.
So Dan, can I jump in real quick? I know that we've got literally like 3 minutes left. I wanted to, as far as the next steps, and I think that's a good idea, and you and I can get together and send out a reminder in order so that we can kind of tailor the next time that we meet. For you guys in your groups, I'd want to just throw this out there. And like I said, I bookended it at the very beginning when Virginia was on, and now we're at the end. We do have a chunk of time at the CDS conference. And so I know that right now you're probably thinking, oh, it's so far away. And like you guys were talking about earlier, we all have 1,000 things to do. I think it's going to sneak up on us a little bit. And so I would ask you guys to start within your groups thinking about, if you have 5 to 6 minutes, I think when Dan and I kind of have worked out the time, each group will have about 5 to 6 minutes to use in whatever way that you would like in order to present your project, talk about what you learned, talk about what you accomplished, talk about what the challenges that you had or what you wish you would have done differently. I think that at some point we do need to come together as a group and decide some consistency aspects. If we want to do, all will do PowerPoint. If we don't, if we want to, all have pictures. I would encourage at this point in time, guys, that for you guys, if you're getting together with groups of any type, that you take some pictures, so that could be incorporated maybe in your presentation. I would encourage just to start thinking a little bit about, if you had a really small chunk of time and you wanted to hit the most important aspects of your project, what that would look like, and start to think about, who would present, how you would engage, et cetera, et cetera. so that as we get closer to the July time when we actually do it, we can kind of start pulling together and see what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also thinking in terms of, as we get closer, how do we retell the story about what happened and what we chose to kind of focus on to strengthen that community, and how we went about doing that. So I hope you're all taking good notes as we go. And that's really what this slide is about, kind of tracking your progress. It might even help to write a one-page description of where you are, where you're going, what you're doing, to kind of look back in 4 or 5 months down the road and say, oh, that's right. I think it'll help you to kind of just capture snapshots along the way so that you can remember your trip.
Absolutely.
You want to say it that way? Yeah. So I've got 5:59, so we're running out of time, and I very much appreciated everybody's participation. I feel like it's so much more rich when we have time to discuss like this. So thank you all. Before we go, any questions, ideas, feedback? Hearing none. I think we're about good things. If you need help or want to connect with the group, check in with that CDS or with the Community Innovation Lab website. We've been posting our webinars there.
Yep.
If you need to remember something. Unless there's anything else, I want to say thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Aaron. Oh, a blog. Is anybody gone yet? No. Does anybody want to blog about this? As always, Chris and I are willing to start something. Does anybody want to participate and team up and review it and add? It's your chance to be famous.
I'll help Dan.
Send me a note, or yeah, let us know if you change your mind. So
All
okay.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you all, guys.